We finally got details on the Quest 3 this week, and with that, new controllers are coming called the Touch Plus controllers. Now, they look like a cross between a Quest 2 controller and a Quest Pro controller. Interestingly, they don't have the tracking ring that the Quest 2 relies on to track, but they also don't have the cameras that the Quest Pro controllers rely on to track. This has raised tons of questions on how are these things going to track, and some of them have been addressed by Andrew Bosworth, the CTO and head of Reality Labs at Meta. Boz, as Andrew Bosworth usually goes by, was talking about how AI is actually going to be used in these new controller tracking. In the article, he says they won't have the large tracking rings that have become commonplace on most other devices. Instead, a cutting-edge AI model can estimate their position in 3D space accurately enough that tracking rings are no longer needed. In an Ask Me Anything on Reddit, Boz took this a step further to talk about how the controllers are being tracked.
This is the question I've gotten the most frequently, and I love it. Going back to the original Oculus Touch controllers, the ring on the outside is covered in a constellation of LEDs in a specific pattern that allowed the computer vision on the inside-out headsets to track the controllers in space. So the new controllers that we have still have infrared LEDs on them in a constellation that you can't see because you can't see infrared light, but that the cameras that we have on the headset can see. However, they also are going to be in positions where many of those LEDs are occluded. And so we have fused the computer vision we were using for constellation tracking with our hand models. So the hand tracking is also going to kind of running at the same time. And so we have a model of your hand that tells us where the controller is in conjunction with all the tech tricks that we've been using for a long time, using IMUs and smoothing to fill in gaps. They work really well.
So the controllers will still have a constellation of the IR lights like we had in the tracking ring, but most likely, as they're shaped just like these Quest Pro controllers, the constellation would be in the very top here where your hand typically does not cover when you're playing. Of course, Boz also mentions the IMUs, and IMU, if you haven't heard of it, is an inertial measurement unit. This is a device inside can consist of several different things, some of which are very common in VR controllers such as accelerometers, gyroscopes, and even magnetometers. These other sensors are why, if you've noticed, your Quest 2 stops tracking at some point and it just floats in the air. If you angle it, it will still turn the angle, or if you try to fling it, it might jump the controller. These are still measuring without the headset actually relying on the tracking ring. The tracking ring is mostly just used for its 3D position directly in space. So the big question is going to be, what does all this add up to for actual tracking quality? One big problem with the tracking ring lights is that if you got the controller out of view of the headset, you got it behind you, it had to only rely on its IMUs, and it didn't do a very good job of figuring out where the controller was anymore. The Quest Pro fixed that because you could put it behind your head and the cameras were still tracking. Along with the constellation up here, an interesting thing, it's using hand tracking just like the Quest 2 does now, but all the time in conjunction with the controllers. So it sees your hand and it's following that actual hand motion. So what does all this mean for the actual quality of the tracking? It means that the headset will see your hand, it will see the constellation of lights, but much like the Quest 2, if it can't see it, it's not going to be able to track it as well. Other headsets have had some luck building predictability algorithms, and there are other systems that are still coming to the controllers, according to the report from Bloomberg that said that the controllers may not be tracking that well yet, but some of the systems weren't in place yet that were going to be in the final product. Bloomberg just got to try a prototype of it. But with all that being said, it is likely that they name them the Plus controllers, because in my mind, if you have the standard, the Plus, and then the Pro is probably still supposed to be the top-notch controller. And they've already said it is an option to upgrade to Pro controllers for the Quest 3 and use those instead. And when they say upgrade, that tells me that it will still be the top tracking experience, albeit some issues they've had lately with some of the newer updates. Hopefully that will be sorted by then. The last question, as we've seen the trailers here, what about batteries? The Quest Pro has these charging pins on the side. The Quest 2 obviously had the battery door. Now, if we take a look closely at the trailer, they do give us a 360 view of the new controllers, and you can see that there is no charging ports anywhere on them. I doubt they're using wireless charging, although it is possible. It looks like there's actually a spot in the same spot where you unlock the battery before, but it looks like that battery door will actually have a button at the top, hopefully, which would be nice because a lot of people have complained on the Quest 2 that it is tricky until you really get the hang of how to do it, how to open these up, and then sometimes if you're really playing some intense Beat Saber, something you get low, you might find yourself opening the battery door. We've got a lot more videos that have come out since the Quest 3 covering the announcements, the new games coming for the Quest 2 and 3, and more. I'll leave links to those all around here for you to check out. But what other questions do you have about the Quest 3? What can we dig into? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for coming out, and I will see you in another reality.